Oh my, it's been such a long time, a few weeks, almost a month if I'm not mistaken, since my last video. Not what I intended, but we're gonna talk about it in this video. However, I pray everyone is doing well on this day, on this beautiful Wednesday, or whenever you come across this video, whether that's Thursday, Friday. If you're new to my channel, my name is Keisha. Welcome. And like I always say, if you're here, that means you were led here on purpose, for a purpose. And as I get into this video, my prayer is that it blesses you, it encourages you, it inspires you, and you just be blessed by it. So last time I was on here, ladies, I mentioned how God was calling me to move, relocate me again, after he had already moved me to Texas, to Fort Worth, Texas, May 1st. And then God had been speaking to me about relocating me to a different part of Texas, which I can share now. I'm now in Austin, Texas. And so it's just been this journey with God, just been moving me. I still don't understand why he moved me from Fort Worth to Austin. However, if you missed that video, I would strongly encourage you to go watch it. It's the last video that I posted, and only because it will help you understand this video today. And it's a very informative video as well, and like I said, it'll just help you kind of connect the dots of what's going on in my life, because like I mentioned, I want to share this journey with my YouTube family, and it hasn't been easy. But before we get into it, as you guys can see, my background is different. I'm outside, it's hot, I'm in the sun, but so that means I'm not gonna be on here that long. At least I'm gonna try not to. So the visibility may not be as clear, but that's besides the point. As long as you can hear me, you receive the message, that's all that really matters to me. Okay, ladies, so listen. When I gave God my yes, right, I had no idea where my obedience was going to lead me. When I gave him my yes to move to Austin, like I obviously I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a job, no income, nothing coming in. Just waiting on the Lord as he leads me. And so, we often hear just obey God, but we rarely hear about the cost that comes with our obedience, right? And so following God can lead us into like uncomfortable and undesirable places, and because we don't know what's on the other side of our obedience, fear often makes it difficult for us to trust him. At least that was for me, because for me it was like, Lord, you just moved me here to Texas, Fort Worth, May 1st. Why are we moving again? Like, could we you couldn't just have led me to Austin? Like, do we have to pass through Fort Worth? Like, I just had so many questions, and I still do. And so with that obedience, with me moving, relocating to Austin, I didn't know that it was going to lead me to sleeping in my car. It reminds me of the story of Abram, when God told Abram to leave his father's house and he would show him a place where to go. And so that's what I was feeling in this moment, because I heard God, tell me to move to Austin, but that was just it. And so I end up packing up my things in my car, and I got to Austin, and then I'm like, okay, Lord, what's next? Where am I going? And I realized, like, wait a minute, I'm about to be homeless. I'm about to be sleeping in my car. Like, Lord, is this your plan for me? Like, is this really what we're doing? And so at first it was frightening. There was nights that, I cried, I questioned, what God was doing. And it was just moments where I felt so abandoned by him. I just didn't understand. I was questioning, Lord, did I do something wrong? Was I not obedient? Because this wasn't the life that I had, obviously, would have chosen for myself. Who would have? And so, every night, I reminded myself that God was with me regardless of what my circumstances, look like. And so that first day when I, came to Austin, a whole week went by. I'm like, okay, Lord, where are you? When you going to show up? Second week goes by. I'm still living in my car. Third week, and so forth. Even up into this day, as I'm recording this video, I'm still homeless in terms of no housing. And so throughout, this season, God has been continually to prove his faithfulness, although, as I mentioned, this is very challenging, very undesirable for me. But he has just been allowing me he's been sending me help. And I remember one day I was just at the park and I heard in my spirit that I'm going to send you help. And he did. He's been sending people to help me throughout this this journey. And he's provided meals through complete strangers. He's opened doors for me to, shower. People have opened up their homes for me to shower, for me to cook hot meals. People have just been so generous with their giving me money for gas. I even broke my phone and someone paid for me to get a new phone. I mean, he's just been showing up, in so many ways, despite of my circumstances, despite of me, of my circumstances not being how I want it to be. He still has been faithful by using other people. And I'm just so grateful for their obedience and so grateful, for their hearts. And so God, he's been, supplying all my needs and my, all my needs. I may not have everything that I want right now, but I do have everything that I need. And every act of provision is just been reminding me that God sees me. One of God's names is Emmanuel. And so it's just God sees me. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but at the end of the day, I'm understanding it's not about my feelings. It's not about what I feel. It's just really about the promises of what God, it's just really about the promises of God, right? And so, although this season is not something, anyone would choose for themselves, there's no doubt in my mind that God has me exactly where he needs me. And the reason why I share that, because one of the most beautiful parts about, this journey is that God has still been using me. Now, I could make the decision to pout, to be stubborn, to be bitter, and say, you know what, Lord, I'm not finna do anything you've asked me to do because I'm in this situation. I can, pity myself, but what's the point of that, And so God has still been using me in this season, in this valley, in my own valley. He has allowed me to still just pray for people, encourage people, just being a listening ear, listen to those that are hurting. And even through my lack, I've been able to provide meals from those that are also experiencing homelessness. I have come in contact with a lot of other people that are also experiencing homelessness out here in Austin. And so just being able to connect with those people, pour into them, and just help them as much as I can has just brought so much joy. And it just makes me realize that, everyone's out here suffering. Everybody's suffering looks different, but it's also about, how you endure, how you continue to show up. I can make the decision to, not show up. I can make the decision to not do the things that God has placed in my heart to do because of what I'm going through. And so, it makes me think about Esther, I think it's Esther chapter 4:14, and it says, and who knows, but that you may have come to a royal position for such a time as this. And so who knows, maybe this is where I need to be, because maybe this is an assignment. Maybe this is God needing to use me, for these weeks to pour into people, to minister people, to tell people about the gospel and things like that. And so maybe this is why God has allowed me to walk this road, this journey, Had he immediately opened the door for me to get my own place, I probably would have missed these divine encounters that I have experienced. And so God's ways are truly, higher than ours. I think sometimes we have to just remind ourselves that, our ways are not God's ways, his thoughts, and so the way God does things, it may not make sense to us, but there's always purpose behind, what God is doing in our lives, even when it doesn't make sense in that moment. And so through, all that I have experienced, I've been having just this undeniable, unexplainable peace. It doesn't mean that my circumstances have completely changed, but I still have peace and I have hope. And that brings so much joy, to my heart, because what we have to understand is that what I'm understanding is that hope is not based off of our circumstances. Hope is, found in the Lord. It's being reliant on the Lord. It's being dependent on the Lord. And so that's where our hope comes from. That's where our joy comes from. Because if I was depending on my hope and my joy based off my circumstances, I wouldn't be able to endure and persevere as long as I have been throughout these few weeks. And I'm just learning that the more the more I trust God, the more I learn to trust him, the more I see him show up in different facets and areas of my life. And that's why it's so important that we get to a place where we know God's character and that we are continuously meditating on, his promises, because his promises doesn't change. He doesn't change just because we are, suffering or we're going through some type of hardship and things in that sort. And so, I share this journey. I share some of this with you to encourage anyone who's walking through, maybe a difficult season as well, whether you've lost your job, maybe you experienced an eviction, or maybe you're facing, another painful trial. I know that pain has purpose. That's what this is teaching me. And God wastes nothing. I know that on the other side of my obedience, that there's going to be a reward. And even if there isn't a reward, God is still good, and so this is really just, since I've been in this journey, especially being homeless, I've been drawing closer to God. I've been just getting to know more of God and who he is. And that may be that's purposeful as well, because sometimes God will allow, hardship and trials to come into our lives, not to, be mean or to hurt us, but because he's trying to prepare us for what we're praying for. A lot of times we're praying for things and God is like, okay, well, I have to work on your character. I have to work on your heart. So I have to take you through a season that may be uncomfortable, but it's going to be for your good. And so I know that God wastes nothing. I know that even in this situation that I'm in, God is going to get the glory out of it. God never does anything without getting the glory out of it. And I just also, want to be transparent. I don't only want to share, the victories. I want to share, also the tears, the questions, and the moments I felt abandoned by God. And those moments are part of, my testimony too. And through every one of them, God has remained faithful. And so that's why I'm being vulnerable with just sharing, me being homeless right now, because someone may need to hear it, and who knows, you may go through a season like this, and at least you'll look back on this video and you'll be like, you know what? Keisha's story inspired me. Keisha's story gave me hope. And so if she was able to get through it, I know God will see me through it, as well. And so when it comes to the cost of just saying yes, our obedience will cost us something. We never know on the other side of our yes until we're already walking through it. And that was me. I didn't know what my obedience was going to cost me. And so for many of us who don't understand God's way, it may seem hard to believe that God would ever call someone into homelessness, or call us into a wilderness, or into a season that looks like it's just completely lost. But when we look at scripture, we see this pattern time and time after again, God leading his people into seasons that didn't look like blessings at first. So we can take a look at Joseph. Some of us, we know the story of Joseph. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers and later falsely imprisoned. Joseph's obedience and his integrity didn't spare him from the pit of prison, but yet those very seasons position him to save an entire nation. And then, we have Moses. After Moses fleeing Egypt, Moses spent like 40 years tending to the sheep in the wilderness. And before God ever called him from the burning bush, the wilderness wasn't a wasted time. It was preparation. And then we could take a look at David. David was anointed king as a young man. David spent years running from Saul. He spent years hiding in caves and in the wilderness. Before he ever sat on the throne, God had already, promised him. And then we could take a look at Elijah. They call him I was going to say the weeping prophet, but that was Jeremiah. But with Elijah, he during a famine, he spent he was like a lonely prophet. Like he was the one that wanted God to just take his life. But God still provided and showed up for him in miraculous ways. He sent ravens to feed Elijah at the brook. He sent him a widow who barely had enough for herself and her son, and God's provision came through unlikely, unexpected sources. And I guess I share all of that because those stories had encouraged me in this season. Even with Hagar, she was alone in the wilderness with nothing. Hagar encountered God in the very place she felt most forgotten, and God gave her the name God. I'm sorry, her name means the God who sees me. So every one of these people in the Bible were uncomfortable before they were led somewhere purposeful. They had to go through the wilderness. So wilderness is not proof that God isn't with us. It just may be exactly the place where he wants to prove himself faithful. And sorry y'all, it's hot out here. And so that's just, God has been showing his faithfulness even in these circumstances. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. It's been very tiring. It's been very exhausting. If I'm being honest, there's times where I just want to give up, but something just won't allow me to give up. And a lot of times, family, when something big is on the way, the enemy loves to try to get us to focus on our circumstances. He loves to try to, the enemy doesn't, we have to understand that the enemy doesn't care about all these tangible things, the houses and the cars and things like that. No. He cares about our faith. He cares about our faithfulness to the Lord. He cares about our obedience to the Lord. He cares about our commitment to the Lord, our devotion to the Lord, our prayer life to the Lord. He cares about that because he knows that if he can pull us away from those things, those spiritual things, he knows that we will be lost, we will be empty, and we will go back to a place that God has delivered us from. We will go back to those old ways, to those old friendships, to those old relationships. And so we have to understand, and we have to continuously put on our full armor, because the enemy will try to do anything to discourage us so we can no longer trust God in these difficult seasons. But the devil is a lie. I've been holding on, and I'm going to keep holding on until God is ready to open up that door. And so what God has been teaching me is that contentment is learned. It's not automatically. So during this homelessness. Like, I just been content. You know, my prayer daily, family, is that, Lord, just give me what I need for today. Give me the strength that I need today. Give me the peace that I need today. A hot meal today, a shower today. You know, things that we typically take for granted, is not until you don't have it and you like, man, this is like, I would do anything for a shower. I would do anything for a hot meal, you know. And it's just, every time I pray those daily prayers, Lord, give me what I need for today, because I don't know what tomorrow holds. Tomorrow has its own problems of its own. And so if you could just give me what I need for today, I'm content with that. I'm grateful for that. And God has been showing up daily and giving me what I need for today. And so another thing that God's been teaching me is that his presence is greater than our circumstances. Like, when I say that, although my circumstances haven't completely been, although my circumstances are still undeniable, but God's presence is so powerful. Just his presence, just being with me, just me being able to feel his love and his comfort. It makes me, it allows me to get through what I'm going through so much easier, just knowing that God is with me and his presence is so contagious. Like, listen, family, if you don't get in the presence of the Lord, my prayer is that you just ask the Holy Spirit to help you to draw close to him, to be in his presence, because I'm telling you, you may go in his presence feeling depressed. You may go in his presence with anxiety and feeling hopeless. But when you come out of his presence, it's just something that God does when you just enter into his presence. It's like that depression just lifts off. That anxiety just lifts off. It's like everything has to just bow. It just has to go when you enter into his presence. And I'm not just saying that just to say it. I'm saying it because I have witnessed it in all areas of my lifetime. Even when I was going through my healing journey, and even right now today. And so, you know, even I don't know what I was about to say, but another thing that God has been showing me is that God, that his faithfulness to provide, even when provision looks different than what I expected. You know, the people that God's been using, this is why we can't put God in a box, because we don't know who God is going to use to bless us. And God has been using people unexpectedly that I wouldn't think he would use. And so I'm just so glad that I have put my pride aside and just been allowing God to just use whoever he needs to use in this season of my life to help me. Another thing that God has been teaching me is that obedience often costs comfort, but it always produces growth. And so although this season of my life right now has been costing me a lot of discomfort, but it's also helping me it's helping me grow in the Lord. It's helping me to grow in character. It's helping me to grow in love. So it's just teaching me so much just about, you know, myself and Christ as well. God also can use you while still waiting for your breakthrough. That's something that God has been teaching me, that he's still using me. He's still using me in a mighty way while I'm waiting on my breakthrough. I'm still being faithful. And like I mentioned, I can make the decision to say no to how God wants to use me while I'm waiting on my breakthrough. But at the end of the day, it's about dying to ourselves, even when our circumstances aren't desirable. Although our circumstances, we can't see the light on the other side, it still doesn't mean that we don't show up, you know, for other people that are in need. Because although I am homeless, there's still other people out here that are in more dire need than me. I don't know how weird that may sound, but it's the truth. And so one other last thing that God has been showing me is that hope is rooted in God's character and not in our circumstances. And as I mentioned, you know, is that hope is not predicated, is not based off of what I'm going through. Hope is found, you know, in the Lord. And so I just want to also, you know, leave your family with some key takeaways. You know, never judge God's faithfulness by your current circumstances. and that your valley may become someone else's miracle. I'm gonna say that again. Your valley may become someone else's miracle. Every act of obedience has purpose, even when we cannot see it. And so we have to just trust God's process, knowing that he knows exactly where he has me. And just because the season is hard, it doesn't mean that God isn't working. A lot of times we can't understand God's ways. We don't see what God is doing, but it doesn't mean that he's not working. As a matter of fact, God does his best work in the darkness. He does his best work when we can't see what he's doing. And so like Paul, we can lean and learn to just be content with God, with Christ, and just knowing that he's enough. And so Isaiah 55 verses 8-9, it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." And so I would strongly encourage you to meditate on that scripture, because sometimes we just think that we have to make sense of everything, but we will never understand God's ways. And in Jeremiah 29:11, it reminds us that, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and to not harm you, plans to give you hope in a future." And so just because we may not understand God's ways, it doesn't mean that his way isn't the perfect plan for our life. And so just know that God knows our future. And although this isn't anything I would have desired for myself, or maybe you're in a season where you may not, your circumstances may not be desirable either, just know that God is going to get the glory. So anytime we go through an undesired season, God always come back with something that exceeds our expectations. And so like I mentioned, Joseph was thrown in the pit, then became a powerful leader under the governor. Job, he lost everything, his wealth, his health, his wealth, and friends who wanted him to curse God. But then God restored everything back to Job. So God's calling on our life, God's calling on our life never promises it will be easy, or that we won't go through the fire, but he does promise he will be with us. And I think that's all that matters, is that he will be with us in the storm. And so once we come out of it, we come out refined, we come out different, we come out renewed, we come out transformed. We don't think the same, we don't respond the same, we don't act the same. We become more Christ-like. Salvation is a instant one-time thing, but transformation, sanctification, it's a process. And so my hope is that if you're in a season where your circumstances are difficult, or you just don't understand what God is doing, my prayer is that you continue to just be hopeful. My prayer is that you continue to just lean in and trust in God. And that's pretty much all I have, ladies, because it's getting hot out here. And I just wanted to get on here. I actually missed being on here, and I just felt this nudge to also just come on here and just update you with what's going on with me. And so I have been applying for some places, and so I'm just praying that God will soon open up those doors. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he's God, so he does the impossible. And I'm gonna try to come back on here again later this week and just post another video. And I pray that this message encouraged you. I pray you just continue to be hopeful and content in your circumstances, and just continue to trust God, because he is faithful. He's the same God yesterday, today, and forevermore. I love you, family, and God bless, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.